What's up guys, and welcome to today's new video where I want to talk about a client of mine that you can see right here on screen, where we have made roughly $600,000 in revenue over the past 7 days, or roughly 2.2 million over the past 30 days. And because a very large portion of that was actually Google Ads, and because I'm managing their Google Ads, I thought that it might be a cool case study for you to look at, because in this video I want to show you things that I've done, things that you might apply to your business as well, especially if you have some solid sales volume already, especially if you run high ticket stores, because this is one. But even if not, I'm sure that you will get some new ideas of what you can do with your store, new strategies that you might want to apply, especially if certain things aren't working that great for you. And with this being said, let's get right into it. First of all, the reason I'm using Google Analytics here is I want to show you some other stuff besides just pure sales, right? I want to show you some information on order values, on how different types of customers perform, etc., because they are very important for the things and for the strategies that I'm talking about in today's video. Okay, with this being said, let me give you a very quick overview on what we're really doing, right? Of course, without being sort of specific on what exactly or who exactly the client is, obviously. So I've opened up a time frame, which is roughly, give or take, when we started working together, right? So that you get an idea of what's happened. So we've increased, since we started working together, transactions by around 24%, revenue by 15%, e-commerce conversion rate by 50%. So generally things are going pretty well. And sure, you could argue maybe there's some seasonality, after Christmas, sales slow down a little bit, but actually it's pretty clear that the tendency is pretty strong and going upwards. And in fact, lately, the upwards trend was bigger than it has been like beginning of the year. So I take that as a fairly positive result. Plus, what is very important, and we will talk about this several times in this video, we have a high ticket product, as I said, and such a high ticket product requires long buying cycles. Our average order value is $3,500, as you see here. It actually went down a little bit in this 2.5 months something time frame. But you can imagine that if an average order value is over 3,000, people don't buy on their first visit. In fact, many people buy after 2 weeks, 3 weeks even. And if you think about it, all the sales here and this improvement so far will be increased further, because we paid for many of these people already in terms of the first ad touch point, right? But they haven't converted just yet, because they will probably convert in a week, in 2 weeks, 3 weeks, something like that. So that's very important to know. Technically, the sales volume will increase even further when we attribute it back to the ads of this month or the last few weeks, for example. So what are some things that I've been doing? Well, first of all, first point, I shifted focus when it comes to products and margins. The thing is, you don't have to sell everything, right? It's a common misconception that people run these campaigns trying to sell every product, and maybe you're guilty of that too, maybe not. I am sometimes, and I'm trying to push products forward, right? And in some cases, in some stores, it does make sense to do it very broadly. However, in this scenario with this business here, it was a prime example of some products were just not performing if we really drilled it down, right? So I was analyzing all the pre-existing campaigns of the previous agency, of what the owner himself has done before, and so on and so forth. And I really came to the conclusion that, some products are actually underperforming in a very subtle way. It's not that you look at one shopping campaign and you see, hey, this product doesn't perform, and you stop it, right? I was going through Google Analytics, through the product performance, which I won't open right now because I have to blur everything anyway if we look at individual products. But here in Analytics, you can go to Ecom Overview Product Performance, and you will see how in your store products overall perform. Of course, you can also do that in Shopify, etc. But in Analytics, you get some more data, like where the people are coming from, and how they interact with the product, and how much value each product has on average, etc., etc. So I was going through all of that. I was going through campaigns, and I decided that I want to focus on certain products and product categories a bit more. In the end, it doesn't matter, in most cases at least, what exactly you sell, as long as the final revenue and the final performance is on point, right? If there are products that are overperforming, the thing is, if you focus more on them, you can nurture them, you can spend more time on them, you can optimize them more, because if you advertise everything and you have a large catalog, it's very difficult to optimize the ads, the keywords, the bid adjustments and everything for every single product. So by shifting, by looking at what's performing, by checking at what's promising, sometimes products may have just sold 3 times or 5 times, but very profitably with a very high conversion rate, which is all stuff that you can see here. Then it might be a good idea to focus more on them, spend more time, spend more effort. And by doing that, which is exactly what I've been doing here, bid adjustments, ad optimization, writing more ads, more keywords, etc., then suddenly they can perform even better, and you get way better performance than if you're doing all these other things at the same time, right? Because if we look specifically at the Google Ads performance, you will notice that it increased more than the account average. So the overall account, as I said, there was some growth in there, right? Some solid growth in there. At the same time, while the account was growing 15% in revenue, our paid search was growing 40%. So the time frame that I started working on that until now, and again, there are probably like 10-15% of sales still missing because of this long attribution window, we increased paid search revenue by 40%, while the account average was 15%. So it had quite a huge effect, right? Even though some metrics decreased, like pages per session, bounce rate, sure, it's great to have them as solid as possible, but in the end, what matters is revenue. And if that's on point, then all the other ones are just like kind of secondary metrics that we want to look at, but they are of course not vital, and they're not the most important things here. This brings me to the second point. Speaking of the long buying cycles, etc., I put together a very in-depth retargeting funnel. So in most cases, I'm actually a fan and an advocate of a simple remarketing funnel, or I keep saying retargeting or remarketing. I just mean the same thing, but for some reason I always mix these two up, but I mean the exact same thing. So when we talk about retargeting, in most cases, for most small to medium-sized stores, I recommend a simple catch-all structure, right? In many cases, there is no point in doing retargeting based on the category, based on whether someone hit the add to cart, the cart or the checkout or something like that, because the audience size in those individual steps might be too small. However, here, because it's so expensive and we sometimes sell products for $9,000 or something, I came up with a very in-depth retargeting funnel. And this includes actually every campaign type. It includes search, remarketing list for search, shopping remarketing, display, YouTube discovery, and performance max. So anything that can be used in Google Ads, I'm also using for retargeting on the site as a sort of complementary campaign type. And this has been working extremely well because I literally follow people everywhere, right? There is no escape from us. You visit our site, you are about to buy something, but you forget about us, or you go to another brand, or you do whatever. I will follow these guys around with retargeting on all ends. YouTube, a fairly decent YouTube video, nice display ads, etc. This is a tip that is applicable to you if you have some decent volume, whether it's sales volume and or visitors. I would say starting from 20 to 30,000 visitors a month, maybe a bit more than that. That's where it can become interesting to do it on all ends. Of course, it depends whether you have the capacity to create a YouTube video, for example, whether it even makes sense. In some businesses, YouTube videos are kind of stupid because the product just doesn't fit the platform. But here I did it all, and retargeting improved by a lot in terms of performance, right? And the reason for that is pretty straightforward. I will show you over here when we look at the multi-channel funnels. When we look at the time lag, right? The time lag tells you how long it takes for people to convert. And with most low to medium ticket stores, they typically convert within the first 2 days, the absolute vast majority. Actually, you typically see, on the first visit, 80% of people convert, or 70 or 90, and then they trickle down. Here, what you see is even after 12 days, still 20% of people come back and convert. So every day, we have tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars in revenue. And this shows you how important the funnel, the retargeting funnel, and the follow-up really is with that particular brand right here, okay? So because they see us on YouTube and they get all these touch points, sure, the amount of money we spend on retargeting per user is fairly high compared to other stores, but it's absolutely worth it. Why is it worth it? Well, as I said, first of all, because of all that. But second of all, let me tell you something else, show you something else, which is, where is it? Behavior, new versus returning. The value of a returning visitor versus a new visitor is always higher, of course. But here it's pretty extreme. So if I look at the e-commerce stats over here, and by the way, you see my face here over the screen, there is somewhere I have to put myself, right? And this was like the most convenient, because if it's at the top, then sometimes I block the date range and so on. So I hope that's fine. Basically, here you see the value of a returning visitor increased to $26 in those past 2.5 months from 17, which was actually pretty high, but now it's $26. And most recently, you know, we had weeks where it was like 37 or something, but 26, where a new visitor was worth $3 and is now worth $4. Now that's still a fairly high amount, but this one is just insane. And it tells you as soon as someone visits like one more time, right, it goes up. Of course, this is a statistical number, right? Not every returning visitor is worth $26. Some people just visit us twice and they might be worth $6 or $7. But on average, someone who visits the store more than once is worth $26 versus $4. So this allows us, of course, to follow them around, or it almost forces us to follow them around, run YouTube ads, search, shopping, whatever we can, just to get as much revenue squeezed out of those people as possible. High ticket, long buying cycle, high returning visitor value. That's why I've been doing that. Number 3 is running Performance Max, but on a small scale and starting small in general with it. I made some video on this channel about Performance Max, how it's worth testing, how it can perform well. I have right now, I think 6 or 7 clients where we use Performance Max successfully, actively, and it's one of our most valuable campaign types now. But in many other cases, not that much yet. Here I introduced it. There has been some Performance Max in the past, but it was mostly brand, so you cannot really compare it, right? I stopped that because I want to have brand only in brand as much as I can and not like a mixed up thing. And I created a Performance Max campaign that is, you know, almost exclusively focused on cold traffic. You cannot block it entirely, unfortunately. And I was running some tests. Then I noticed that the original campaigns were actually outperforming Performance Max up to a certain point. So when I tried to increase the budget of Performance Max to like beyond $500 a day, I noticed things are not really going that well. But when I kept it somewhat lower, you know, $100, $200, $300 a day, then it actually gets some nice ROAS, nice sales volume without really hurting those other campaigns. And that's now the sweet spot where I'm just keeping it. Sure, it's not making hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars, but it's getting us some very solid 5-figure revenue on top of everything else that we're doing. And it's just sitting there optimizing, and I regularly check the assets, whether I have to replace something. So the learning here is, consider Performance Max, but on a small scale. Ideally, do not advertise every product and or do not advertise every country. So here we're only selling in one country, okay? If you sell in 4 countries, let's say Canada, Australia, the US and the UK, for example, and New Zealand maybe, who knows, you should start with one country. That's a great way to test Performance Max because your other countries will not be affected from it, and you can test whether it works without breaking everything apart. Because one issue with Performance Max is you never know whether it will outperform or underperform compared to your other campaigns. And it's very risky to throw everything at it and then hope that it will work out, and it doesn't, right? So find something that you can limit Performance Max to, ideally, as I said, countries, product ranges, etc., and then run a test. In our case, now I found the sweet spot. I probably try to scale it again in the future, pretty likely, but for now I'm happy with how it's going, and it's just adding and contributing some nice sales volume to our store. Number 4 is a little bit counterintuitive because I keep saying how automated bidding strategies can perform much better than manual CPC, right? And if I look at my mature accounts, in the vast majority of cases, target ROAS especially, but auto bidding in general, besides maximize clicks, we don't really use that, performs better than manual CPC. And that makes perfect sense. If you have a lot of conversions, if you have a lot of data, Google is smarter than you and it performs better than manual CPC. However, here I started to introduce some manual campaigns as well. And the reason is pretty straightforward. As I said, we sell very expensive products to a very specific audience. I think I know these people fairly well now, and I think I know fairly well, you know, the mechanics and the specifics and the behind the scenes of what is needed to get the optimum conversion rates. Now, of course, Google knows all these things as well, but it's way more difficult for Google to do so on a very high ticket business where we have less conversions than with low ticket, right? Like we don't have 10,000 conversions a month or something because we sell super expensive stuff. So to Google, it's more important that you have a lot of conversions than what the total revenue of these conversions really is. So in our case, I decided, okay, there are some products, some categories where I want to keep control, and I go with manual, and I set adjustments for devices, for audiences, for demographics, for all kinds of things, and do a lot of manual stuff in there. Yes, it's a lot more work, and in many accounts, it's not really what you should do once you have a lot of conversion data. In the beginning, yes, but later on, not really. But in this case, I feel like sometimes I'm like, that I'm sometimes like smarter than Google in this particular case, right? In this very specific case, that I can outperform them, at least on some campaigns, with the strategy. Don't get me wrong, most of the time I'm not smarter than them, and that's just something we have to live with. But in some cases, high ticket, very specific, niche products, things like that, it can be useful to try manual CPC and to outperform, especially when, for example, auto bidding isn't working for you anymore, right? Maybe you have paused your campaigns for a while, or you have done something that confused Google, so to speak, and running on target ROAS is not the best strategy anymore. So if that's the case, if one of these things is true for you, right, consider switching back to manual CPC as well for some of your campaigns at least. Do all these adjustments, and then later on you might consider going to target ROAS with that as well, or you just keep it. In some accounts, I have some campaigns producing very, very high sales volume, purely manual CPC. Yes, more auto bidding, but this does happen. Number 5 is pretty much the same thing. Previously, when I started here, they were running a lot of very large-scale smart shopping campaigns. And we saw in one of my latest videos how this can perform very well in this example of a multi-million-dollar smart shopping campaign, right? I showed you in another video. But in some cases also, it can make sense to have control on like bid adjustments, negative keywords, and so on and so forth. So similar as with Performance Max, I picked some categories and products where I said, you know what, here I want to have full flexibility, I want to have full adjustment options and everything. So I went ahead and I decided that I want to run some standard shopping campaigns as well. Because there are some nuances in our niche, in our products, right? Sometimes we do need adjustments. One example would be devices. Now, don't get me wrong, if you use target ROAS, for example, of course, Google keeps devices in mind as well, right? And they are bidding more on desktop if desktop is performing very well, because this is one of the most obvious things to run adjustments for. However, I was doing that more than Google. So Google went on running on smart shopping, for example, all that kind of stuff. Yes, they were bidding more on desktop, but I realized that, hey, wait a minute, we have like 5 times more conversion rates on desktop, right? We make so much more revenue on desktop, even though mobile traffic is much bigger and much larger in terms of how many people visit us, 200,000 here, 57,000, yet double the sales from desktop, that I said, okay, let's bid even more aggressively on them. Competitors may get all the mobile traffic in the world, but we spend super aggressively on desktop. And it's not even that desktop clicks are like 5 times more expensive to us, right? It's sometimes double, sometimes triple, sometimes just 30% more or something. But I decided that at least in some campaigns, I want to be able to focus very aggressively on that, and not just as if you keep it with all auto and all smart shopping. Yes, Google realizes, hey, that's more valuable, but they don't do that as aggressively as I do it in this case, because here it's so obvious. So Google goes in the right direction, but you can go the extra mile if you take it into the standard shopping kind of thing. You see, this video is actually quite a bit an advocate for trying manual things, manual campaigns, manual bids. And again, don't get me wrong, that's not the usual case. I just want to make a point in this particular business here, that particular scenario. Normally, I'm also more on the auto bidding side, but here it can be useful for you as well. Because the more high ticket and the more unique, as I said, it can make sense. Smart shopping is very difficult in spotting the nuances. If you have a few very high ticket products, for example, smart shopping relies on a lot of data points and a lot of information. And if the difference between those products is fairly small, sometimes just one tiny keyword that makes all the difference, smart shopping will not always be able to realize whether that's right or wrong. And you cannot see search queries, so it makes it all difficult. That's why I put it together that way now in some cases. And now we have number 6, which is dynamic search. Now, if you have a store with a lot of products or a lot of categories or whatever, right? Dynamic search can be huge and still way too few people are using it actively. Let Google crawl your site, let Google decide what's relevant in your store, write individual ads for different categories, high, low ticket, different subcategories of products, maybe even some dynamic ad targets for your best sellers. The point is, make use of dynamic search as soon as you have, like, let's say more than, I don't know, 30 products, 50 products, right? It can technically make sense to always try it out, but especially if you sell quite a few products, then dynamic search is a must-have. Yes, it's not always easy to make it work. Yes, by default, you will get a lot of branded search queries, which you have to exclude, etc. But it's important. And if it's doing well, and if you optimize it, and if you work on it, etc., then it can perform really well and become probably even one of the best performing search ads that you have in your account. Again, depending on your store, the complexity, the quantity of products. But really recommended to do this. It's something that I introduced here as well. We have been doing it before, but it was very, very brand heavy, just as with Performance Max. So I was doing a more broad, cold traffic, very optimized, many different ads, many different ad angles, sort of a more complex setup. And this really brought in sales and many high ticket sales as well. And by the way, you can also use dynamic search for remarketing very well. So dynamic search is a perfect campaign type for remarketing, actually. So these were already some key points on the store. What I've been doing to grow it by 500K in Google Ads revenue, plus what I said, the additional revenue that's still missing due to the attribution window. Of course, how many of these strategies you can apply depends on the business, but it's very, very important that you at least give them a try, okay? Test them out, see whether they work for you. And if you wonder whether you can apply them, whether it makes sense, or what you may want to do or what you should do in your business with your store, whether you're spending 5K a month on ads or 50K or 100K, then you might want to check my site called Cartlift, where you can schedule either a meeting with me, or if you don't want to, you can also just send a message. I'm not forcing anyone to book a meeting, just to give me some more information on what you are doing. It might very well be that in your case, a strategy that's totally different from what you see here makes sense. And in that case, I will tell you, hey, that's probably a good idea. And if you want to do that, you can then decide whether you want to implement this with me together, whether I should implement it completely for you, or whether you say, hey, thanks for the input, but no thanks, I want to do it myself now. The point is, feel free to check it out and we can see how I might or might not be able to help your business as well. It doesn't have to be a multi-million-dollar one so that I can help, but if it is, of course, chances are that I can, make even more of a difference, because of course the more you sell right now, the bigger of an impact my work might have for you. With this being said, I hope that this video was helpful. I hope that this little case study gave you some new, fresh ideas. I hope that you can implement it in your business as well. Let me know in the comments roughly where you are with your sales volume right now, 10K, 100K, a million. And yeah, it will be very interesting for me to know. So thanks a lot for watching. Please subscribe to this channel if you want to see more Google Ads and e-commerce and conversion rate optimization content. Yes, that one is kind of fairly new here, but I'm doing more of that now in the future too. So thanks a lot for watching. Please subscribe if you want to learn more, and I look forward to see you in the next video again. And with this being said, all the best and bye-bye.